Pigeons. We call them dirty pests, rats with wings. But the truth is, there was a time when the fate of our nations rested on those wings. This is the story of Cher Ami and G.I. Joe, two pigeons that flew through hell. The year was 1918. The Great War, the war to end all wars, was entering its final brutal stretch. Across Europe, the land itself had turned to mud and fire. Fields were shredded by artillery and forests torn to stumps. Communication was chaos. Wires were constantly severed by shells, radios were unreliable, bulky and easily jammed. Messages sent by runners or motorcycle couriers were slow, and many never arrived at all. So armies turned to something you may think unlikely: the homing pigeon. The United States Army Signal Corps trained hundreds of them in mobile lofts stationed near the front. Each bird was carefully tagged, catalogued, fed by hand and trained to return home no matter where it was released. Among them was a small blue check hen. She had been bred in Britain and loaned to the US forces. Her name was Cher Ami. On October 2nd, 1918, nearly 550 men of the US 77th Division advanced too far into the dense Argonne forest in northeastern France. They broke through the German lines, but their success became their trap. They were surrounded on all sides by enemy troops and cut off from supply and communication. For days they fought, dwindling their rations and ammunition whilst the casualties rose. Then came the worst twist of all. Their own artillery, unaware of their location, began shelling their position. Every attempt to send word back failed. Runners were shot, radio operators were killed. Major Charles Whittlesey, their commander, realised his last chance lay in a wicker cage containing just 2 remaining pigeons. The first one released was shot down almost immediately. The second was Cher Ami. Whittlesey wrote on a thin piece of rice paper, "We are along the road parallel to 276.4. Our own artillery is dropping a barrage directly on us. For heaven's sake, stop it." He rolled it up, placed it inside a small aluminium capsule, and tied it to Cher Ami's left leg. Cher Ami took off into the chaos, wings slicing through smoke and shrapnel. German soldiers spotted her immediately. A lone bird rising from an American-held position could only mean one thing: a messenger. They fired. Bullets tore through the air and one found its mark. A round ripped through Cher Ami's breast. She was blinded in one eye, and her leg, the very one carrying the message, was nearly severed. But she didn't stop. She climbed higher, through the wind and smoke, over German lines and shell fire, flying 25 miles in just under half an hour. When she reached her loft at the division headquarters, she collapsed, covered in blood. But the message capsule still hung from the tattered remains of her leg. The coordinates she carried stopped the barrage, and 194 men were saved. Soldiers rushed to her side. They worked to save her as if she was one of their own. The medics cleaned her wounds, bandaged her chest, and carved her a tiny wooden prosthetic leg. She was awarded the French Croix de Guerre for bravery in battle with the palm for extraordinary service. Newspapers called her the hero of the 77th Division. When she finally died the following summer, she was preserved by the Smithsonian Institution, where her body still stands today. Two decades later, the world would burn again. Radios had improved, planes filled the skies, but even in 1943, when the Allies invaded Italy, communication could still fall in the chaos of battle. And when it did, they turned once more to pigeons. Among them was a dark grey cock pigeon. His name was G.I. Joe. It was October 18th, 1943. The British 56th Infantry Brigade had successfully captured the Italian village of Vecchia. But headquarters didn't know. A bombing raid had already been ordered to soften enemy resistance, and was now just minutes away. Radios were jammed, wires were cut, and the only means of communication left was G.I. Joe. The message tied to his leg read, "Our troops are in Vecchia. Hold the bombing." He was released at 12:35 p.m. The bombers were due to drop their payloads at 12:45. 10 minutes to cover 20 miles. G.I. Joe flew low and fast through mountain wind and enemy gunfire. He reached the Allied headquarters at 12:42, just 3 minutes before the first planes were set to attack. The message was read, the orders went out. The bombing run was aborted and over 1,000 British soldiers were saved. G.I. Joe became the most celebrated pigeon of the Second World War. He received the Dickon Medal, Britain's highest honour for an animal valour. The citation read, "For delivering a message to the Allied forces that saved 1,000 lives while under fire in just 20 minutes." He lived out his days at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, as part of the US Army Signal Corps Pigeon Service. He died in 1961 at the age of 18. Like Cher Ami, his body was preserved and today he rests in the National Museum of the US Army. Between 1914 and 1945, more than 500,000 pigeons served the Allied forces. They carried messages across oceans, deserts, and mountains. They flew through blizzards, artillery smoke, and poison gas. More than 30,000 were killed in service. Their success rate was extraordinary. About 95% of the messages were delivered. They saved soldiers, redirected artillery, and even carried small cameras that captured some of the first aerial images of enemy positions. But when peace returned, the lofts were dismantled and the pigeons were released. Their descendants are the same birds we see every day. As technology improved, the pigeons were replaced. The world no longer needed wings to carry words. Pigeons adapted brilliantly, as they always had. But instead of being admired for their resilience, they were punished for it. The same instincts that saved soldiers now made them scavengers. The same endurance that earned them medals now earns them disgust. We forgot that they didn't choose this life. We bred them for loyalty, sent them to war, and then abandoned them. Look closely at a pigeon in sunlight. The feathers on its neck shimmer in greens and purples. Their eyes burn a bright amber or red. If you saw that same palette on a parrot, you'd call it beautiful. But because it's common, because it lives where we live, we dismiss it. Pigeons don't need us to love them, but maybe we should remember why we once did.